Hello. So, yeah, welcome to another live stream. Um, First one of the year on YouTube. Hello, Richard. Hello, Maker Viking as well. Both hello to both of you. Um, Little bit of cosmetic change on some of the thumbnails, etc. Just because I thought the thumbnails were a bit plain with just white or black with some writing on. So just found an image on Google and stuck it on basically. Um, if you can let me know if the audio and everything is okay. I'm already getting warnings from YouTube Studio that the stream's not very good, but what can you do? Um, so yeah, today we are going to build a camera slider. Now this is one of the projects that a company called JJRobots did. And if you've been on the channel before, a video I did actually quite a while ago, I can't remember. Audio is good, thank you. I did a balancing robot, which was also one of their projects. I'm just going to move that camera down a bit. And then hopefully not knock it off. Hello, Matt. Nice to see you. Yeah, so a balancing robot. And their projects basically all used their control board that they put out at the time. And that was called, what is this called? Called the Diva or Devia, however you want to pronounce it. And basically what this control board does is it allows them to write their own Android or iPhone apps and use the control board to control the whatever you put it in. So one of the reasons why I'm making this particular one is because I've got the board. And so without having to spend a lot of money to get some functionality, that's the one I went for. The downside of that is that it does appear that the company doesn't exist anymore. Websites are still up. You can get the print files on printables and all of that, but it appears you can't actually buy the control board. And actually, interestingly, a couple of months ago, I had someone message me because of the video I did about the balancing robot, asking if they could buy the board. Now, the problem is I had always intended to do other projects with it, so I couldn't really sell it. I think you can use like an Arduino, a certain board. Actually says what we'll do is we'll get into, we'll have a look at the documentation first, and hopefully this is going to be, yeah, for some reason I didn't capture the window. Let me try this. There we go. So you should be seeing the JJRobots website. And basically this is the instruction manuals for this camera slider, but I downloaded the files from printables. So the link in the description is to this page, and then if you want to look at the instructions, they're linked here. So I have actually already tried to assemble this camera slider, and the reason I did that is because I wanted to pre-tap the holes, because we're only screwing into plastic. But I also discovered that there's a part that you print, and I think it's called the 623Z envelope, or something like that. And I was like, oh, what's that? Because obviously 623Z refers to a bearing. The only bearing that the bomb has that you need to buy is this quite a large one, and we'll come to that in a minute. And that's what the actual camera will rotate on. So I was a bit unsure what this print was, so I just carried on printing the parts and went to do the mock-up assembly to make sure all the screws were in and everything. So it turns out that that print is actually quite an important part, and that's what goes at. Let me just switch over to this other camera. So I've got my other camera set up, so I can show you the parts and everything. Got a cup of tea. I'll just have a quick drink. So this part actually goes on one end of the extrusion, and that's what the belt is going to roll on. But there's nowhere in the BOM that it tells you actually to buy these bearings, so I don't have any. I have now ordered some because I tried to put it together with a bearing I had on hand, which was a flanged bearing, and the problem with that is that it lifted the part up too much. And although, as hopefully we'll get to later today, you will be able to move the camera, it rubs on the end and causes friction, so it doesn't quite travel to the end correctly. So I've ordered the parts, and I'll still be able to show you how to use it, but it will work better hopefully once I've got those bearings. So let's have a look at the parts that we do need. So obviously you need this board or an alternative, and I think the website does tell us that we can use an alternative. So I'm just going to have a look. So this is the BOM, and the only bearing it tells us about is this 6002 RS or 6002 ZZ. That's the only bearing that it talks about. So yeah, so here, this is the control board or an equivalent Arduino M0. And then because this board has on board an ESP8266 and driver, you basically would need 3 separate boards to achieve the same thing. So although it's possible to do without this board, there may be alternatives that are a better option. And I think what I probably plan to do is build this one, try and use it, try and do some video and social media posts with it, and then if I find that it's lacking or that it doesn't quite do what I want, we may revisit camera sliders later in the year and we'll build one that's actually more accessible to everyone else. So yeah, so that's the plan. So we also need 2 stepper motors, and I'm just gonna get this camera in focus a bit more. Let me just zoom in a bit. There we go. 2 stepper motors. Now the BOM actually called for a 16 tooth and a 20 tooth pulley. I've only got 20 tooth pulley, so they actually do provide all of the code and everything that you need to put on the board. So I have actually adjusted the code to account for 2 20 tooth pulleys rather than a 16 tooth. You need basically 2 cables for your stepper motors, or if you've got integrated cables in your stepper motors, you can use those. You need some GT2 belt. Now let me just zoom out a bit. So this is one of the printed parts, and I've kept the belt on because it was a really tight fit to push in, and I don't want to try taking it out for the purpose of rebuilding it on stream in case we either break apart or it then becomes too loose. So that part is still stayed in there. Parts are printed in Prusement, is it Mystic Brown, I think it's called, or something like that. Like a coppery, shimmery coppery colour, which is quite nice. And then this has also got a couple of pieces of hardware in. This one here will be to capture the other end of the belt once we pull it through, or once we've gone all the way through the system. And then this other one is to tension what will be 3 V-slot wheels on here onto the piece of extrusion. That's one printed part. And then basically I've got a little box of all the other parts. So I've put together all the screws and everything that you need, and we'll talk about them as we come to them. And then basically everything else is the printed parts. The only other couple of pieces of hardware that you need is this. This is the 6002 ZZ bearing that it spoke about, and this is basically what the camera will eventually sit on and rotate. So, and then obviously you need this 200mm closed loop belt. And those were really the only things I had to buy, or thought I had to buy. I've obviously now had to order those other bearings. So we'll come to the printed parts as we get to them, but we'll just start putting things together now. So what was I about to say? You can, I suppose you can make this basically as long as you want. It's all dependent on your extrusion and your belt length. Hello Maple Leaf makers, nice to see you. I only had a piece of V-slot extrusion this length, so my slider will be relatively limited in size, but the intention with this slider really is only to do sort of shots that are on when they're on the printer, or when I take them off and I can do a quick video of them. So it doesn't need to be like really long, but I could extend it later if I wanted to. So the other thing I was actually going to mention, the good interesting thing about this camera slider is that it's actually a tracking slider. Now it doesn't track in the sense of what's it called, computer learning. It basically, through the app you tell it a couple of measurements, and as the camera moves it'll actually remain facing towards a fixed point, and that's where like this part of the whole assembly comes in. If we go over to this screen again, so this then tells us how to start putting this together. So I will just start putting it together basically, and I'm going to have to sort of switch between windows because I've only got like one screen. So while I'm showing you the browser, I can't then sort of control the camera or anything, so, or see what I'm showing you. So the first things I'm getting out are the M5 25mm bolts. So these are basically going to be for our wheels. So let me get the wheels out. Actually, I'm going to get all these parts out so that they're out on the desk. What you can also do, so as it sort of comes standard, if you like, is to sit on some legs. So you'd have it maybe on a desktop and have your object on the desk as well. But what you can also do is mount it on a tripod. Now, unfortunately, the part that they supply doesn't fit my tripod. So I can find the part. Yesterday on Printables, I found basically a print of what is the quick change plate on my tripod. What I'm going to do is basically make a file up, a model that I can use to mount on the bottom of the extrusion, and then also goes into my quick release plate. So that will be an extra thing that I can do later. So first thing we need to do is basically get this piece of this print. Let's just move a few things out of the way. And we put these wheels on basically. So as I say, because I've pre-tapped all these holes, they're just going to go in a lot easier. And they weren't too bad. They didn't really require it did certainly help having running a tap through rather than just using the bolt, because the problem whenever you do that is that you risk basically cracking the part. So that's why I wanted to go through and pre-tap the holes, so then I know that they work fine, and just makes it a little bit easier for me doing this sort of on camera as well. So we don't need to tighten these up like mega tight. We don't want to crack anything. And I'm pretty sure that the tension on these wheels was okay for the extrusion, but I can just test it. So it will basically go something like this, where the belt, let me get that into the right position, belt goes into the groove, and then this will slide along that, and it slides okay. So I think we're okay for tension. Move that out the way. So let's see what the next step was. And so it basically tells us to put those on. And actually, let me show you that rather than me. So this is the screw that I was talking about, which basically allows you to just adjust the tension on the extrusion. And then the next part, I would say there's a couple of things that I would say about this set of instructions, is that they're not that clear. Like, that picture doesn't really tell you that that is another piece of print. So what I'm actually going to do is leave this bearing in this part of the print, because I've pushed it in there now and I can't get it out. But yeah, so this this picture doesn't really tell you in too much detail how to put it. It basically just shows you a picture, but doesn't tell you what to do in any great detail. But what you're basically doing is, is putting this rear plate onto this plate. And I'm just gonna have to reference that picture to make sure I get it in the right place. I think it goes something like that. Right. Yeah, so it's not the easiest of things to understand, unfortunately. But yeah, so it goes together like this. And then we have to then screw this plate on. So Get some hardware out. We want M3x10s. I'm just going to grab the little, I think the print that most people have printed when they're a builder or a maker. Just a little measuring guide for screws, basically. So yeah, so we should have all the hardware should actually be here. I've already gone through and selected it all. And if anyone has any questions while I'm doing this, please feel free to ask. And I'll just put this together basically. So yeah, it was a lot easier once I'd tapped these holes. That's the wrong bit. So although, like I say, this is a camera slider, and you'll see later how the camera actually attaches to all of this, I actually probably will intend to put like either an action camera or a mobile phone on, mainly because I think my SLR camera will be too heavy. And I'd rather not risk the camera falling off. I'll try my best to make sure you can see what I'm doing. Whoops. Camera just turned off, but I think it came on again. I haven't got any music playing today because although it doesn't make too much difference on my channel because it's not monetized in any way, I always get copyright strikes. So I thought that I wouldn't play any music today and see if I get away with not having any copyright strikes. What I might do is just move this camera a touch my direction because I naturally am over here, and that might help so you can see. There we go. So this is where one of those electronic screwdrivers would come in handy. But we'll make do. So I think really the whole reason I wanted to build this actually was to make like better shorts and all those smaller pieces of content rather than just taking a static photo. So you've now got basically this part and this part now attached, and what it would tell you is to basically put the bearing on, and I have to try and remember which way it goes. It goes this way. It's a nice tight fit, and as I say, this part is already on, so probably not the greatest of filament to show. Camera, but there you go. So let's have a look at the instructions again. So basically what it wants us to do is adjust the tension on the rail, which I've sort of already done, but this is the point it would want you to do it. And as I say, you need to use that screw there. Once we move to the next step, you won't actually be able to get to that screw because it's got the motor in front of it. So that's why you have to do it at this point. So the next thing it wants us to do, just download a load from YouTube Audio Studio, Audio Library. Okay, and though I suppose those ones won't get a copyright strike. I don't think basically, I think the music is royalty free anyway, the ones that I had normally played, but it still then puts like a warning on the channel. So the next part I'm putting on is basically a cap that will hold the bearing down to this the part at the bottom, because we're screwing into that nub that was sticking up. Just want to make sure that all spins around basically, which it does. So that was that bit. And so the next part is a little bit tricky because I don't, again, just use YouTube ones as they cannot be claimed. Well, they can by YouTube, but anyway. So this is a little bit tricky because I'm not convinced that the belt is actually the bomb asked for a 200mm belt. I think it actually could be a little bit bigger because it's very difficult to get all of this put together. If you assemble it first. So what I was doing was basically putting the belt on the large pulley and then putting the little pulley on and then putting the motor up. Why does this keep... There we go. Right. I just wanted to make sure which way we need to put it around. So we have to make sure that we have the connector for the motor on a certain orientation. So then we'll need some 6mm. Whoops, he's pressing the wrong button. So basically we want to have the motor connector coming out this way. So I basically was doing it like this because I couldn't find a better way of doing it. And of course what we also have to make sure is that we have the pulley, whoops, the screw, the grub screw for the pulley on the flat side of the motor. I just need to undo that slightly. So it's a little bit fiddly to sort of get all these things happening at the same time, but it should be possible. So let me position this in roughly the right area. So yeah, so basically like that, and the motor sort of in the right place. It's almost like at the maximum belt tension already, and we've only just like put it on. So what I'm going to do is quickly tighten up this grub screw so that it doesn't turn the pulley. But as you can see, hopefully, maybe, is that there's nowhere to adjust the tension. Like I can't move the motor out anymore. So I think potentially the bomb should call for a slightly larger belt. And honestly, that there's a few little things like that where potentially this is not a very well designed camera slider, or at least the instructions aren't particularly good because they're not calling out certain things. So hopefully you can still see that. Let me just try and get this screw in so that we've got something holding the motor in. Let me try and get one of the back ones on first, actually. If that makes a difference. There we go. So once we get one on at the back, that should hopefully make the ones nearer the front a little bit easier to put in. Here we go. So we'll just get these in loosely, and then we'll obviously got to adjust the pulley. Make sure that we're having a parallel belt. Oops. I will have to have a look at the YouTube audio then, just so we've got something in the background. So what I'm going to do is basically just loosen this pulley just enough to move it, and then I can move the pulley up so that we just get the belt in the right place. And we'll just tighten it down a bit, and then just by moving everything we can see what happens. So we could probably move that down just a bit, because at the moment we're sort of rubbing on the bottom flange of the pulley. So if we move that down just a touch, and then that at least lifts it off a little bit. Hopefully you can see that. But it's relatively straight now. And then what we want to do is to make sure we tighten these grub screws on the pulley. And it's not like where we're building a printer where we'd want to put Loctite on or anything. It's not that important. They're not gonna be moving fast enough to basically come out. And I will try and get a little bit of tension on the belt, but we're not going to be able to do a lot. So Matt is saying you can filter it for different genre, then download as much as you like. Cool. I will have a look. Did you, Matt, did you get any further on looking for software or anything to do streams with multiple people? I noticed we got a reply on your tweet from the software you mentioned, from the manufacturer, developer, whatever they might be. 312 Rock. Is that the genre? Is that the where I need to look? Is it for some music? That's basically got that onto there, and that looks basically like the picture. So let's bring that up again. We can have a look. So if I'm holding it up so I can look and see that I've visually done what the picture shows, and then basically it's showing us the back as well, but we don't really need to worry about that. Okay, and then I'll show you this bit. So what this part, this is the part where luckily I managed to find, I'll just move that out of the way a second. I managed to find, and amongst all of my photography bits and bobs, this little bit, because obviously we need the correct thread to go into any of our camera type equipment, but we also needed it to fit in this part. And the one that I have on my normal camera is actually too big, but this one fits exactly. So that was quite lucky. And let me just refer back to that document. And it's more for me to get the part the right way up, because I don't think orientation matters particularly. I'd like to yeah, make sure I get it the right way up. I think that's right. So yeah, so it basically goes like this. We're basically sandwiching these two pieces together. This is two separate pieces. These go together and then have to line up through these holes. And let me just check what so some more M310s, basically a lot of M310s. So let's get some more M310s. Look at maybe trying to and restream for multiple people's streams. And then what we then do is we then basically sandwich all of this stuff together, and then this will give us our camera that can rotate. I'll just move that over there a bit. I can screw this together. So these are basically through holes, these ones, because the thread is in the lower part, basically. There we go. So I'll just basically put this together. And again, we don't need to do this too tight. We're just basically holding a few things together. Need to make a brew. Nice one. Actually, that reminds me. Mine's getting cold. Nice. So yeah, and then you can see the I don't know what the correct term for this particular thread or thing is, but the tripod or the camera screw, I think I'll call it. So that's them joined together. Then basically, so if I grab this, so this is basically a mobile phone holder with a camera mount screw on the bottom. So basically, if I was to screw this on here like that, and then my camera or my phone, if I just grab one out of my pocket, was in here like that, you can then see that this basically will rotate around and keep the camera pointing at whatever we point it at. We'll take that off for now. We don't need it on there. But that is essentially what that part does. So again, let's go back to our instructions. So yeah, so it's basically now showing us the part that I just show you, and how you could also use a ball mount part. The only problem with that is you add quite a lot of height to the camera, and that could cause it to topple over. That's why I'm sort of not putting one of those on. Plus, the one I have is quite a good quality heavy one. So we can put this part aside now for a couple of seconds. Let's have a look at the window again. So the next part, and this is again where the instruction manual goes a bit odd, is that now we've got tiny little pictures and we can't really see what we're doing. But what it's basically telling us is that we now need the motor end, which is a printed part, and we need to use some slightly longer bolts. So let me go back to here. So this is the motor part end that it's talking about, and we basically need to attach our motor to it. So I'll grab the other motor, and that will just sit in there. And these do have like the round part that the motors have on there, and it just fits in there really nicely. Let me just check that, make sure I've got it the right way around. Yep. So we just need to put that on there with some 15, which is a bit of an odd number, and I think, yeah, mine are 16. It doesn't matter, they still fit. So 15 to 16. But yeah, these then go into these 4 holes, and again these are through holes, and the thread will be in the actual motor itself, in the stepper. So yeah, so I will briefly touch on the other slight issue I had with this build, or this choice of camera slider. So as I said, it uses an app to control the functions. That app isn't on the Play Store. So a lot of the other JJRobots apps are on there, including the one for the balancing robot, but this one wasn't. So basically what I did was just Googled the name of the app and APK, which is like the I think it's basically the package that an Android app uses, and I managed to find the app and basically uploaded or downloaded that to my phone, and then used got my foot stuck, basically used the phone, told it to allow external sources, blah blah blah, and installed the app. So I'm not sure how like if I'm allowed to distribute the app, so I will see if I can find that out, and if I can, then I'll put a link to where I downloaded it from into the description. But yeah, that was a little bit of an issue, but I managed to find it. Okay, who's this? Graham. On the Trident, how about fix the slider to the bottom of the build plate? I have spare motor drivers on the Spider. Use clipper to control it. Yeah, you potentially could do that. You'd have to probably like come up with how you're going to mount it, because as you'll see once we get going, the camera moves along on the top of the rail, and there's not, my idea was actually to at some point, I don't know how well you're about to see, I'll try and show you on the 2.4. Like, my idea was to basically have something, if I was printing some PLA or something like that, I could have the door open, I could attach it to the front of the printer and then use it like that. But I see no reason why you couldn't. It all depends on, like, so I wouldn't know how to do it, is what I'm basically trying to say. But it's all to do with how you would actually go about controlling the motor and in what way Clipper is going to interact with it. Like, if you were doing a time lapse, for example, you could like, normally when you do a time lapse, and I'm sure there's the time lapse functionality built into Clipper now, whereas it will go off to the side so that the print head is not over the print. I suppose at the same time as you moving, yeah, I'm not sure how you'd actually get it to work, but I don't see why you couldn't use spare motor drivers on the board. It's all to do with the software, hardware, and how you're going to get it to do that, basically. But I do intend on trying to connect it to the front of the printers at some point to try and film as the print is happening. So the next thing we need to do is basically put and what you can actually do is open these pictures in another tab. So see, that doesn't actually even look like a pulley. That looks, well, it is a pulley, but not a one with a screw on. I'm just going to use the ones that I've got, basically. So again, make sure we've got the flat of the motor facing forward. Now, where did I drop that other? There it is. Other Allen key. I think there are a few different options for how you are going to control a camera slider. And the reason I picked this one is because I have this control board already. So, like, I've already got half the problem sorted out. This actually could probably go up a little bit higher. Whoops, too high. But I do think it probably isn't the best choice if someone is looking to build a camera slider, because of the control board that is maybe harder to get. But you know, this is just basically a project I've wanted to do for a little while, and I've got most of the stuff to do it, so that's what I'm doing. And I won't do these too tight in case we have to adjust this later. See, I don't actually have, just talking about printers and cameras, I don't have cameras attached to the printers themselves. I'm not that interested in monitoring the print while it's printing on individual printers, and therefore to do time lapses, mainly because I don't tend to leave the printers printing for any length of time on their own. But also, I've got a camera mounted to the ceiling, which is a motorized camera, so I can move that, and if I do have to go out, or if I am out while I've got a print going, I use that, and I can check on multiple printers. And because that's done through its own app, it's not accessible by everyone else. So but yeah, bit of a right. Let's do. So it also wants us to put. So again, it got us to put this this pulley on, but then it wants us to then grab the next part and put some feet on. So this is now what they call the pulley end, and this is the part that I've got the that I don't have the correct part for, basically, because it was a little bit not explained that I actually needed it. So basically what this is asking us to do is to put these feet on, and again, it's not the easiest picture to see what it's actually asking us to do, but it basically wants us to attach these feet, this feet, to this part, and we want it on the end that is furthest away from the extrusion, basically. So let's get some more screws. I'll attach these to here. I think these are the right ones. Again, these are pre-tapped, so or they've been used. I don't know why my camera keeps turning off, but it does. Actually, when I built this the first time, I used different motors, some larger motors, and they actually were too big for the legs at the other end. So that's why I'm now using these motors. So again, it was a good thing that I sort of pre-built this. So this is the part that I've got that is an issue, because it doesn't at all talk about this part. It just basically says put this on. But yeah, so basically that part is now where did I put it? Is this small, what they're calling a 623 envelope. And basically what they want you to do is put two bearings, I believe two, but again doesn't tell you, into this part, and then this is effectively just a plastic bearing that's going to go on the end of here for the belt to run. So I have this this small flanged bearing here, which does fit. But the problem is that flange then actually lifts it up too much. So this is a very bad way of getting around the problem until basically until I get the correct parts. But basically what this does is it goes into the end as basically a roller for the belt. Let's see if I can get this on. So I'm basically going to do it like super loose, basically, just so the belt can run on it. So that's that part. And let's have a look at what else we've got to do. So yeah, so it now wants us basically to put that part on the end of the extrusion. So let's come back to this. So this extrusion is not the best by any means. It was used part of a printer basically. So I'm reusing it for this. So let me back this camera out a bit so you can get a wider view. And they've actually got I can't get you a close-up picture of this. So they've modelled in the ends of the V-slot extrusion. So you have to basically slide the extrusion onto the end. So I've just got to get this extrusion the right way up. It needs to go on here like this. So basically you just have to line it up. And because I've already put this on, it does go on a lot easier. And I'm just going to basically push it on like that. So this is like one end of what will be our thing. What I'm also going to do, actually, and I don't think I left the screw out. Actually, I'm going to have to rebuild it anyway when I get those other parts. So, but what I was going to do is put some T-nuts in the bottom here, or any type of nut really, so that I can put the tripod mount on. But because I'm going to have to rebuild it later anyway, to do this part, I'll do that at another time. So let's have a look at the next part. So it basically wants us to put on the belt and right, so I can show you that. And it's sort of, yeah, so it says here, do not pay attention to the electronics already placed, they will come later. So basically what we need to do is to get this part here. So let me zoom in. So I've already installed this nut and bolt here. And basically what this is going to do is basically extend into this channel, which I'm not sure if you can see or not. There you go. And that's where the other end of the belt's going to come. But this end of the belt is again into a printed set of teeth. And that was quite tight to get in. But that's fine. That means it's in there nice and snugly. But what you also have to do is make sure you get that fully recessed down, because this part is going to run under the wheel basically. Let me just make sure I get this put on the right way. Yeah, it doesn't really show you which way it's meant to go. I'm sure it did somewhere. Trying to find a picture where it shows me which way the electronics are in comparison to the ends. Okay, so the electronics are going to be on the opposite side. So this will go like this, I think. And I'll show you what I'm doing in a second. I've just got to make sure I know how I'm doing it for myself before I can show you, basically. Yeah. Okay. So let's come back to this screen. So what I've done is this has to go onto our rail, and I've got the motor on this side and the electronics are going to be on this side. So they've just got to be opposite basically. So then what we need to do is run this belt through the extrusion and out this other side. Now this can be a little bit tricky. To get everything to go where you want it to do. What you can also do is sort of just put a bit of a bend in the belt. And that sometimes helps just get it past that first part. Like that. And we'll pull that bit through. So it needs to sit in the groove. And then it will come round and basically go back through the other way. So let's do that. And now we can actually move that with the belt. But as you can sort of tell, because this isn't the correct sort of bearing setup, and yeah, it's a bit not right for what it's meant to be doing at the moment, but we'll make do. And then this belt then goes under the wheels, so again keeping in that groove, and it's now out the other end. So let's go back to this, see what it wants us to do. We'll close these pictures. So yeah, I've basically just done what it wanted you to do. So it wants us to, does it actually ever tell us to fit this? Let me read it. Pass it around the pulley. Pass it around the 20-tooth pulley as in the image, and then use a mallet to fully insert. So basically it's telling us to put the other end on. So let me come back to this. So it wants us to basically put the other end of this on. And again, I've already like pushed this on before, so it goes on relatively easy. And then again, we've got to get this belt through there, round the pulley, and back out the other side. So this is then a little bit of a pain to get to where it needs to go. So let me try and get you a good picture of this. So this is the end of our belt. What we need to do is go under here, but then it needs to come up this path here. So I found basically just a little bit of trial and error. I'm just going to move my mouse out of the way so I can get into a better position to try and show you how to do this. So what you basically need to do is, as you're pushing it through, you need to basically fish it out and get it to come up. I actually might have used, yeah, I've got like try and get a pointy tool, basically just a nice narrow point that we can use to get it to go up that groove. You probably can't see that, but so I've now got it up there. But what we need to do now is actually get a bit of tension on the belt itself, because this, again, is not perhaps the best way of securing this end of the belt, but it's the way that they've done it. So what I'm going to do is get a pair of pliers. And at the same time use a Allen key. What we need to do is basically grab this belt and put a bit of tension on. If you can see that. I'm grabbing the belt, pulling it. Might even get it in a better position. But then what you also need to do is then screw down this screw. You can probably sort of turn it down, pull it a little bit, turn it down. And what basically you're doing is wedging the belt with the bolt into between a printed part and the bolt. So that now basically runs on there. But as I said, because this is not really the right setup, it does tend to move around a bit. I might actually have to adjust this. That's probably what the problem is. So if I, yeah, so I could probably do with lifting this pulley up a bit. Basically, we're right at the top of the flange. What we'll do is we'll undo this one first. This is on the round part of the shaft. These always get stuck in these grub screws, so we'll undo that and we'll do this one. And we'll just lift it up a bit and we'll run this up and down. It looks like we need to go a little bit more. So again, undo the grub screw and then sort of lift it up and tighten up at the same time. Now we've probably gone the wrong way, a bit too far. Trying to show you. A bit more. So that's a little bit better. It's now not rubbing on either the top or the bottom. So let's tighten these down a bit more. I'm just gonna do that off. Oops. Camera so I can see what I'm doing. So yeah, just tighten those up basically in the final position. This is the sort of thing that you can fine adjust a bit later on. So yeah, that seems to be working okay. I would still say that this end is not quite right because of this not being the right pulley and everything. It just doesn't want to sit correctly. But hopefully when I get the correct bearings, that will work a little bit better. But we'll see. Let's turn this around because I think we're going to want to put some feet and electronics on. So let's have a look. Yeah, so it basically wants us to put some. Oops. What I'm actually showing you now. There we go. So let's move this out of the way a second. So we've got a couple of printed parts here. Sort of running out of room now. But this printed part is for the electronics. Let me get that in focus for you. So this is basically like just let me just read what I've got to do. Yeah, so we take our board basically, and then it will sit this way. Is it this way? Yeah, like this. And then one of these holes will have screw in it. Let me just double check which one that is. Very hard to tell on these small pictures which one it was. I think it calls for a 10mm. Let me come back to the screen. So it calls for a 10mm, but actually it wants a 6 or even an 8. Let me just double check. I attempted to use a 10 before, it was too big. So this is a 6mm bolt. And then that just goes in to this hole here, again threading into plastic. So you don't need to go too tight. And I did actually have to do a little bit of a repair to this board. These, I think these are just called like header pins or something like that. These are actually surface mount header pins. So there's no through hole. And maybe it was just because the board is relatively old and obviously used for plugging in, plugging out. That actually came off, so I had to solder that back on. Wasn't the easiest thing to do, but I managed to get it done. So what we need to now do is to flip this around so you can hopefully see. So this is our motor electronics end, I'll call it that. And where the board has this power input plug, there's actually like a bit of a recess in the printed part. So that's where that board goes. Again, we want a 6mm for this hole at the end, because we're only going through the board into the printed part. And then this end, let's see what it calls for and what I've actually used. Let's see, 10mm, another 10, but actually wants a 6 and then a 20. So let's see what I used. So it is a 20. So this one then goes into here basically. And again, so it has to go basically all the way through this printed part, and then it will go into the board. And this one wasn't quite a through hole, it was a little bit too small. But once the screw had gone through it, it was fine. Let me just undo these a bit. There we go. That's just basically just got to hold the electronics in place. And then I think we want to put some feet on the end. Have a look. Yeah. M3, M10, M3 10 mil to put the feet on. So basically this foot here will go like this, and because now I've used a motor that's smaller than the feet, it will actually stand up. So let me just try and get this into here. I might put the other one in as well. What I'm doing is I'm just getting them through the plastic a little bit, so that then they will actually rest on where they need to, and then we can continue screwing them in basically. I just had to double check that I was actually putting the foot the right way around, but it is. So then basically this will flip over, and it now actually sits on the feet. So I've got to put this one on a little bit more. It's easier if I just take it off and do that. There we go. So that now sits on there. Now it's on its own feet basically. So we're coming to the end of the assembly. Let's go back to the window. What we then need to do is basically plug some stuff in. Yeah, so what we want to do, so let me go back to camera. So we need to grab our motor wires. So I've already, I basically made these wires up, or this one, just for this small motor, for the small end, small length rather. So this cable goes into here, and then it wants you to sort of take it round this side, round here, then plug it in, and then let's make sure we get this plugged in the right way. So this is the rail motor, and that goes into motor 1. So on the board, electronics board, motor 1 is this one at the bottom here, and we'll put it this way around for now, and then we may have to obviously switch motor direction by flipping the actual you probably didn't see any of that. So I've just plugged that into the bottom of the two motor ports, and then obviously the other cable, which is much longer than it needs to be at the moment, but this is the sort of thing that will all be changed and worked on while I'm using it to see what works and what doesn't work. So then this one will go into basically the other motor driver, like that. So, you know, I could, another thing that I would probably comment on is this leg is basically just using the control board at the other end as the other leg. It's not probably the best way of doing it, but it does work. So, next stage. We'll double check which way the platform and everything goes in a second. So then the next part of the manual talks about adjusting the current for the motors. So, and sort of basically it talks about a bit further down, checking the current that's going to the drivers. I've already done that. I've put them to 0.8 milliamps. And then it also talks about putting the software onto the control board. I'm not going to cover it in this live stream, basically because there's going to be very few people who've got this board, and the instructions tell you how to do it. Basically, just download the Arduino IDE. The software, let me just make sure, I think, yeah, so the software is available here. So that's available, that's not a problem for you. But this I couldn't find in the Play Store. So I had to go and find that basically. So let's have a little clear up and then we'll attach some power and I'll show you how we actually control the slider with the app. So again, I'll have to double check that I can distribute the app because I'm not sure if I can. But I will, obviously I've told you sort of how I found it, so you could probably find it yourselves. But I will try. Right, so I need to do some plugging so I can plug in. So this is a 12 volt 2 amp, I think. 12 volt 2 amp supply with just a barrel connector on the end. So basically the way this works, so I've been keeping my phone on charge up here. The way the control board and the app works is that it's got a built-on ESP chip. So it's basically got onboard Wi-Fi. So when we connect the power up, it basically initializes the control board and sets up its own hotspot. And at no point in that tutorial did it tell you how to connect to this control board. It's only because I've built one of their machines before that I know that basically what I have to do is go and search for the hotspot that it's putting out, and it takes a little while to get recognized. What I might even have to do is just make sure it's so. What sometimes I have to do is like turn on and off the Wi-Fi on the phone. My laptop is showing the hotspot, but my phone is not at the moment. But basically it's now putting out its own Wi-Fi hotspot. And then eventually my phone should pick it up, I hope. There we go. So I won't show you on screen, but I've now basically connected to the board. When you first do that, it will ask you for a password. That isn't written in the documentation. I believe, now I did find it somewhere else on the website. Let me see if I can find that for you. I think it was on another it might actually be under here maybe. Yeah. So there is a link to it, and it's basically 7654321. That is the password. This does tell you how to connect to the board. So when you're connected to the board and you're basically connected to that hotspot, you then need this app. I'm just going to make sure it's going the right direction, and then if I need to power off, I can do that. Right, so I think that's going the wrong way. So let me just also check the I think that's going the right way. I'm not entirely sure. So we certainly need to basically pull the power, because we need to, excuse me, we need to change the direction of the rail, which is this bottom one. So all I'm going to do is basically pull the connector off, turn it 180 and put it back on. And you have to also manually set like your 0 point. So you have to move it, and it's probably better to do that when it's powered off anyway. So we'll then plug it in again. So we have to go through this whole process, but once we've done it, we sort of know that it's going in the right direction. And we might have to just change the turntable as well. What I was planning to do, let me see if I can find a cable. And what I was planning to do is just hook up. There we go. So that's found that. Before I connect that up, let's just make sure the turntable is going the right way. So if, for example, we were going to use my Guinness mug as our object, what we basically have to do is put in on the app, get this in focus for you, basically some information. So the length of the rail, and you can turn off object tracking, so it will just literally go up and down. But with object tracking, you can then put in these other pieces of information, and that explains down here what those pieces of information mean. And basically what that does, so this rail I need to work out the length of. By putting the information in, basically all it's going to do is say, right, the length of the rail is this long, the object is this far from the rail, and this is how I need to sort of basically turn it. So I'm going to underestimate this because I want to test something. So I'm actually going to tell it that it's only about 100 millimeters long, this rail, because last time I tried to use it, what's supposed to happen is this is supposed to travel all the way to the fixed end, not a hard stop, but an end that it knows, and then come back. And so it's supposed to go backwards and forwards. It wasn't doing that. So the next part that it's asking for is the distance. So camera object distance X is basically how far. So I'm going to just tell that it's object tracking. I'm going to tell it that it's 50. Again, this is just for testing purposes. And then this, you have to tell it that it's a certain distance as well. So we're just going to go 200. And then you can also tell it how long you want it to take to do that. So if we said, right, I want you to go that distance in 30 seconds, you put that in and then you just press start. So I can already tell that the platform is going the wrong way. So I'm going to have to do another flip of the motor. But this time the platform motor is going the wrong way. So again, we just basically take that, flip it 180, and we'll put it back on. So now everything should theoretically be going the right way. So what I'm going to do is find that cable, and I'll try and visually show you what it's doing. So if you just bear with me a second. Okay, so what I'm going to do is basically connect the action cam up as a separate source, and then I'm going to try and show you that happening. So what you actually have to do is several things. You have to basically point the camera at what you're doing. Where's that power going? Get that back plugged in. Let me plug this camera in. I will hopefully unplug the right one. That one. We'll plug that in. And then we'll select that it's camera. So then what hopefully I'll be able to do, and I've unplugged the mouse, but I can't use that. I'll set up a new scene. Yeah, new. Slide. Right. So let me just bear with me a second while I set this up. Actually, I'll go to that. I never remember how to do this. There's a studio mode, but I'm not sure how to get into it. So that you basically don't have to see me fumbling to set this up. Well, you just have to put up with me. So hopefully you should now be able to hear me, and you're viewing the Guinness mug. So I've now got to go back into the Wi-Fi and set that up. Let me just come back this scene so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just trying again to connect to the Wi-Fi of the thing. It doesn't always come up very quickly. Hopefully not everyone's left yet and you're actually good about to watch this work, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Yep, Matt's here. Nice one. Right, so we should now have everything going in the right direction. It does unfortunately reset the details in the app. So I've just set that up. We're gonna do a relatively quick, so it's going to take about a minute to do. So let's move you over to this scene and then hopefully it works. So what should happen is that this will travel down, but it will remain looking at the object. So let me just check to see if that is moving. I can't really tell if it is or not. The camera is moving, but I'm not sure if yeah, so that should be basically doing what I want it to do. What I'm going to do is stop it, move that back. I'm going to get it to go a little bit faster because that's a bit slow. So this should be a little bit faster. So the reason it's not quite doing it as it should do is because my lengths where everything were wrong. But what I want to do is just to, right, so it did only go a short distance. That's what I wanted to test. But as you can see, it goes backwards and forwards, and I think it will just carry on doing that. So we'll see. Yeah, so it does. So what we'll do is we'll stop it. And I'll increase the length of the rail. Let's go to 250. Okay. Everything else. What was X? X. So basically, what you can do is set up. So I would say this is probably about 200. Whoops! And I've just closed the app like an idiot. So I think this is. So we'll get it to go for about 30 seconds. So this should work a little bit better, hopefully. So yeah, so that's basically what this camera slider does. So I think it's pretty cool that it keeps its, and this is in tracking mode, so it's using that information that we've given it to go up and down the rail and then come back. So hard for me to tell while I'm sort of watching the screen. I'm trying to see how smooth it is. It looks pretty smooth. But yeah, so that is basically it. And then it will just keep on doing that until you stop it, basically. So I'm going to stop it there. And I'm going to increase the rail length again because I find. And I don't know if I'm still streaming or not. I think we probably are. If someone can just let me know. So yeah, so what we'll do is I'm going to get this to come to the end again. Stop it there, and I'm going to increase this length again to 350. Matt's using his thumbs up. Thank you, Matt. and we'll go 15 seconds again. I'm just making sure, I'm basically trying to judge how long the rail is. We can probably go a little bit further. But yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And this is working, like I say, I think if we change the bearings at the end for the correct ones, which I've got on order, and you know, I'm going relatively fast while I've got this set up to go relatively fast, but we can, and this should be pointing at that rather than somewhere else. Let's go 370. We'll go a little bit slower this time. We'll go like 45 seconds. So you can do some quite interesting things with it, I think. And you can also turn the tracking off. So if you just want the camera to move through the whole scene without moving, you can set it up to do that. We'll just see how far down the rail it goes this time. Make sure I've not gone too far. Yeah, I can probably go a little bit further as well. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please let me know. But now I've built it, I think this will make some sort of quite interesting content for sort of shorts or Instagram type posts rather than like full videos. What I like is actually it with this tracking is that it slows down the camera motor as it knows it's getting closer or further away from the thing. So this will basically just run now. Let's put it on the main camera so you can see what it's doing. So yeah, just going backwards and forwards, controlling this platform. I'll move that up for you a bit. There we go. A bit. So this is being controlled as well as this is being controlled. Yeah, pretty cool. And this could obviously be anything. It could be a phone. This is like a cheap action camera. You could theoretically do it with the big DSLR. I think it would be a little bit heavy for this. I think this is more of a smaller device type rig, but it should all work. I'm just going to increase the rail length a little bit more just to get a bit further out of it. I reckon we can go to 390. We can make it go pretty fast as well, actually. Let's make it go as fast as we can. So it can go, this is the fastest that it can go. I'm just keeping an eye on the cable and everything, make sure it doesn't get caught. Switch you over to the slider again. and it will just continue to basically go backwards and forwards. So another thing you can do on the app, if I press stop, so it's stopped, but I can then also continue. So the buttons you've got are stop and start. If you press start, it thinks you've moved it all the way back to 0, whereas continue will remember how far it's traveled. So that will just basically continue to do that until I tell it to stop. So I'll just wait for it to get to the end and I will stop it. There we go. So yeah, there we go. That is basically the JJRobots tracking camera slider. It's relatively cheap as components go. It's a lot of 3D printed parts, a couple of step motors, which pretty much we've all got if you're into this hobby, drivers. So the only problem is that control board. And I'm going to have a look and sort of see how much it would cost to get those 3 separate boards that it said it needed. So it would be an Arduino M0 board. I might have one of those. I think an Arduino Duo is that sort of processor. Then your ESP and then your motor shield. But yeah, so that is a relatively simple camera slider if you've got the parts, I guess. We may look at this later in the year for a better, bigger, simpler camera slider, as in electronics. So yeah, if you've got any questions, then please put them in the chat now. Otherwise, we'll sort of call it a day. We'll give it 5 minutes for let you do that, for catching up on the lag. I'm going to adjust this camera because it's annoying me. A bit too low now. Bit better. There we go. So yeah, I thought it was a pretty good little project to start the year with. And that's the sort of thing that I'm going to be doing in these streams is all good. Thank you for being here, Matt. Are you going to be streaming soon, or not as in streaming today soon, but do you know when you're going to stream next? So yeah, that's the sort of thing that these live streams for me are going to be. It's going to be doing little projects like this where we've printed the parts. We're actually making use of the printers for something that's a bit practical for people who want to do YouTube videos or social media stuff. So it's basically you're telling it how long the rail is. So there's no end stops or anything like that. No, what's the word? Senseless homing. It's literally, I know the app knows how long the rail is, and it's stopping before it gets to the end, basically, and coming back. And then, so if I can show you on the app. So let me put you onto the other view so I can show you a bit better, and I can actually zoom in and focus the camera. So yeah, we tell it basically how long the rail is, and then you see you've got object rail distance Y and X, and it explains it down here, but it's basically how far down the rail is the object and at what angle the object is. and it basically works out for itself how far it needs to go to do all the panning. So yeah. Playing with stream elements and stuff, and at the moment may send you a link to restream. Yep, that'd be good to see if we can get it working. So I'm using stream elements. I can't remember. I'm not sure if Adam at Vector 3D uses that. He may have moved on to something else. But when I was gonna be doing live stream, I spoke to him, and that's what I use on here. So this, I think Adam said on your X post that he uses like Discord. I'm not sure if you can do video and audio in Discord or what, but with elements you can basically pull in scenes. So obviously I had the web browser that we pulled in, and then you've got multiple camera sources if you want them. You've got a chat box over here, which doesn't always have a lot of chatting on my streams, but yeah, it's pretty good. And it's all done on so the scenes are browser based. So you go log into Stream Elements website and create your scenes, and then so this is OBS, which is sort of logged into Elements. You just put a browser as the scene background. But I don't, because I've never done any multi-people streams, I don't know how you'd set all that up. But yeah, by all means, send me a link if you want any help getting it together. Yeah, it is relatively easy to set up, but has some relatively cool features, I think, that you can set up. Obviously, you've got all your audio inputs and loads of different inputs basically. So yeah, I think I know there's been some FA Cup football on at the moment. There's a Liverpool Arsenal game at 4:30, which I'm going to be watching. So it's sort of built and timed it quite well, I think. And I'll be playing around with this and hopefully actually get some content I can make and put onto Instagram and YouTube Shorts and stuff. What I really wanted this for is because my main project for this year is the E3D tool changer that I'm going to basically, I have seriously lacked the motivation to do the whole time I've had it. But this year I'm really going to focus and get that working properly. So this is going to be an important part of getting some good content when that machine is fully up and running. Excuse me. So yeah, let's turn this off. So yeah, I think we'll call it there. I'm going to find out that information I talked about and put any relevant information in the description if you are thinking about doing this. I'm also going to make that thing that will allow me to attach this to a tripod, which I think will be a lot easier for setting up. But yeah, so thanks for watching, everyone. I'll put mine. I forgot to add the microphone on this scene, so just added that in. But yeah, so thank you everyone for coming along, and I'll see you in the next one.